Welcome back to Pedal Down 4x4, and on this Tech Tip Tuesdays, we're talking about turbos and wastegates. Alright, so this is another Tech Tip Tuesday, 10 to 15 short video talking about turbos. So this is just a general overview of a turbo, how a turbo works, and whatever. So this is your common turbocharger. Now a turbocharger can be fed, well, not can, it will be fed oil. So you're gonna have a oil fill and a drain, as well as this turbo can also be water cooled. So certain turbos will have oil cooling and or certain turbos will have water cooling. Some turbos are just cooled by the oil itself. It's usually depending on the turbo. Usually ball bearing turbos are cooled with water, and journal bearings are cooled with oil. So, and it's really just depending on what turbo you get. I've seen journal turbos with water cooling as well. But anyway, so when you're talking about a turbocharger, you're gonna have three main sections of a turbo. You're gonna have the compressor, the turbine, and you're gonna have this little, I forgot what it's called, but this little middle bit. So very scientific. But when looking at a turbo, you're usually going to find nowadays the new language talking about turbos is 6266, 5858. 5858 is what I'm using on the Tacoma right now. But that refers to the compressor and the turbine wheel size. So when you're looking at a turbo, you're going to see a couple different numbers, and you're going to see a couple different things where it says it'll be like inducer and exducer. Now, the inducer on the compressor side is where the air gets sucked in. So that is this middle section of the turbo, and the exducer is where it's exiting the turbo. So it's coming out of this port. So it's actually, I don't have this turbo apart, but it's two different sizes in the compressor cover. The turbine side on this turbo, this is going to be the exducer because this is where the air is actually coming out. The inducer side is going to be coming in through here. So when referring to turbos like Precision, they usually run their terminology they use a 62, 66, or 64, 66, 88, 84, 96, or whatever the size. That is going to refer to the inducer on the compressor. That's the first number, so 58. And then it's going to refer to the exducer, which is a 58 or a 62, 64, whatever it might be. Different manufacturers will use different terms. Like Garrett will be like a GT35 72 or something like that. Like a GT35 is the housing of the turbo itself, the model, but there'll be different sizes of that turbocharger. Now, how a turbo works is you're gonna have your exhaust gas come through here on this bottom bit. This is gonna mount to your manifold. That is gonna spin the inducer on this turbo, and it's gonna exit out the exducer. There's a shaft in the middle of this turbo. While it's spinning, it's gonna spin the shaft on the inducer, which is sucking in the air, and then that's gonna push the air out of this little bit right here, and that'll be the exducer side of the turbocharger. You're also going to have AR, which is your area to radius. That has to deal with the center line of this and the, I believe it's the diameter. So in layman's terms, if you have a smaller AR housing, this housing is smaller. If you have a larger AR housing, this housing is larger. So the more large of a AR housing up to a certain point you're going to have, you'll be able to have a lot more top end power because your engine will actually be able to move air more freely. The bad part about this is because the exit velocity of the air is slower, you're going to have a thing called turbo lag. So while your engine is spooling up, and you're going to see those videos of like 2JZs, big turbos or LSs, and they're sitting on the line and they're revving their engine, but it's getting louder and louder and louder and louder. That's because it takes time for the air entering the inducer to spin up this turbine wheel, to spin this compressor wheel, to then build up boost pressure. Okay, this is a short video. Remember, this is a short video, so I'm working a little fast here. Off of the compressor housing, usually you're going to have a port. Some turbos have them, some don't. This is where you get your boost reference if you're going to run a boost controller, or you can also run off wastegate. I tend to run my wastegate off the manifold because you're going to see a pressure drop between the compressor and the actual manifold pressure. But anyway, so that is basically the basics of a turbocharger. It's a very simple thing, but it can get very complicated. Smaller turbos, you're going to have a much faster spool, a lot better low end torque and response and whatever, but you're going to suffer on the big end. A bigger turbo, you're going to suffer on that low end. That's going to be that turbo lag. You have to bring the RPMs up to like 4 grand, 5 grand in order to get into that peak boost range, but you're going to have a much higher high end. So for drag racing, big turbos. For like circuit racing or rally racing or like even off-road, daily driven vehicles, usually a smaller turbo is going to be better. Now, don't get the smallest turbo housing you can get. So don't get like a 0.68 AR housing on like a GT35 if you have like a big Land Cruiser with a 4.5 liter engine. What that's going to do is it's actually going to choke out the engine because the engine can't breathe properly. So you do need to size a turbo to your engine. Now, moving on to wastegates. I'm not sure how long we are in this video, but this is a wastegate. This is a tile wastegate. It's a good unit. This one has been damaged already. So when you have a wastegate, this bit is actually going to be mounted to your exhaust manifold. And there is a spring. So there's a spring in this housing right here. And that is putting pressure up against this piston. So you can't really, this guy's tight. You can hear that right there. So what happens is you're going to have this little nipple here on this bottom port. Now this is just to run standard boost control off spring or off of a boost controller. This is not CO2 control. So when you're making boost, and let's say you have a 10-pound spring, there's different sizes of spring that goes inside of a wastegate. You can have, if you get a precision, you'll usually have like 4 different color springs. Each color spring is rated for a different PSI or a pound rating. Now, if you have a 5-pound spring in this, when you have 5 pounds of pressure that goes into here, it'll then push this piston up. That will allow the exhaust flow to come out of this end, and this can either be, they call it a screamer pipe, or be tied back into the exhaust. That will allow the exhaust flow to bypass the turbine housing, and that's what controls your boost pressure. Now, if you have a boost controller, it would hook up between whatever your vacuum or your boost reference is. So if this is your boost reference, this is your wastegate, let's say this right here is your boost controller, that's going to hook into here, and then from here, that goes into there. How a boost controller works, and I know I said we weren't going to get into this, but I'm going to get into it real quick, is it's going to create a small little, it basically restricts the amount of boost pressure that can get to here. So this is still a 5-pound spring, but then you can up it. So you can tighten it up or you can soften it down, where you can actually make it from 5 pounds, you can make it up to 15 PSI of boost pressure, and still use a 5-pound spring. The thing about that is, the one good thing is, like if you have like a Haltech or a Moltech, Fuel Tech or whatever kind of like a Mega Squirt or something, you can set up parameters in here where if you go over boost, or you see a engine parameter where, let's see, if your oil pressure set to a certain PSI and it dips below that, it will open it up and it'll completely go back to the spring pressure. So let's say you're at 20 pounds of boost, you're going down the drag strip and your engine loses oil pressure. The computer will see that. It will send the signal to the boost controller. It'll open this up and it'll go straight back down to 5 PSI boost pressure, or whatever your spring pressure is set at. Another thing that happens with a turbocharger that you'll be looking at is when it does come to the wastegate, sometimes you're going to have a built-in wastegate, and this would be a separate wastegate that would go on the manifold, as I said earlier. Some turbochargers actually have the wastegate built into the turbine housing. Now, some guys like that, some guys don't. I personally really like it. And the reason for that is you don't have to fabricate your you don't have to fabricate anything for your wastegate, just the dump. And that's pretty much it. That'll be sitting on here like this, and you're gonna just change your spring pressure. Some turbos are set and you can't change them, which is kind of sucks, but then you can run a boost controller off of the wastegate itself. This flange right here, this little piston thing, that'll sit inside of your turbine housing, and that's gonna allow the air to bypass the turbine. But yeah, some turbos are built like that. I do like them. However, because of packaging restraints, sometimes they can be a little bulky as a single unit. Usually small turbos are like that, and personally I prefer them just because it cuts down on the fabrication needed to fit everything. But for a larger turbo, they're usually separate. I think that's pretty much it on turbochargers and wastegates. All the things we love, makes all the shadooshes sounds, all the toosh sounds. It's a little unnecessary, but we love them. They are expensive, depending, and they make your car go faster, or your truck, or whatever. I'll see you guys this Friday. We're working on the Tacoma again. Like always, thanks for watching.